Governor Ron DeSantis, who is, of course, the governor of Florida, he was in the news today talking about the state of the economy, and he made some comments about DOGE. He also he's making gold and silver legal tender in the state of Florida, which I found to be pretty interesting. But he also touched on the new spending bill that Congress is working on passing, and the fact that there's not really anything pertaining to the efforts of DOGE, that they're not including anything in the bill that DOGE has put out with regard to fraud, waste, and abuse. They've uncovered well over $100 billion worth of money the government could be saving, and apparently none of that is in the bill at all. And a lot of people are speaking out on social media about that as well. So I've got Governor DeSantis here. This is a tweet that he put out today. This was at 9:30 a.m. this morning. And he says Elon Musk took massive incoming, including attacks on his companies as well as personal smears, to lead the effort on DOGE. He became public enemy number one of legacy media around the world. To see Republicans in Congress cast aside any meaningful spending reductions and, in fact, fully fund things like USAID is demoralizing and represents a betrayal of the voters who elected them. Which is very true. That's part of the reason why so many people voted for Trump, why he got the majority. It's because he was on the campaign trail, Elon Musk showing up numerous times, and they were talking about creating the Department of Government Efficiency, and they were going to combat fraud, waste, and abuse. And we all knew that before Election Day. I mean, they were very clear about it. So I know the legacy media, they like to paint it in the opposite light by saying that, oh, we're blindsided and Elon Musk is running roughshod around the government and he's acting like a dictator. And none of that's true. It's all bullshit. So anyway, let's see. Let me go over here. I got some bookmarks here. This was some remarks that Governor DeSantis gave today, which I've got a video, or I've got the clip up here, better quality on YouTube. X, it just doesn't have very good video quality. I wish they'd get better at that. So this was with regard to the lack of DOGE cuts in the spending bill that Congress is working on passing through, which, by the way, they're talking about raising the debt ceiling another $5 trillion, which is absolutely psychotic, and nobody voted for that, and that's pissing off everybody, myself included. It's going the opposite direction. They should be lowering the debt ceiling and erasing, in any way they can, as much debt as they can, and that's part of the reason why DOGE is there. DOGE is there to try to keep the debt ceiling in a downward trajectory, not up. So that's frustrating, but anyway, this was from the user Matt Van Swol. You know what we need most? The DOGE cuts. Please explain why there are no DOGE cuts being passed at all. You've had 130 days to pass any DOGE cuts at all. You have not passed a single one. Please tell us why. Tell us when you are going to pass them, which I don't think they have any intention on doing. It's such bullshit, and it's really frustrating. This is why Congress has such a low approval rating, because they don't get shit done, at least not what the people want to see done. So this came from Josh Barnett, I'm assuming Arizona, candidate for Arizona. The establishment is trying to wait out Trump past the midterms with no DOGE cuts into law so that the Dems can take back the House and impeach him for no reason again. And this came from BTC Psychopath. If Republicans lose the midterms, here's the obvious list of failures that caused it. Number one, no Bitcoin audit or follow-up on reserve. Another one, no Bitcoin bill passed. Also, no audit of Fort Knox, which I know Trump mentioned that he wanted to get done. I'm sure Elon mentioned that with DOGE. Definitely need to take a look at that. If they refuse to let DOGE in, to at least go in there and snap a picture. Let's see what it looks like inside Fort Knox. Is it still filled with gold, or did all of these fuckers in the government over the last 40, 50 years just completely empty it out? Because I don't think it would surprise anybody if they revealed that Fort Knox had no gold in it. I'm assuming that it's still full of gold, but why don't they just show us a picture of what it looks like today? I mean, I know the conspiracy theorists will come out of the woodwork and say, well, the picture of it being full of gold, that's AI, dude, or that picture was taken decades ago. I mean, I could see where not everybody's going to be satisfied if they actually came out and said, yes, Fort Knox indeed has gold reserves, a lot. But anyway, so the next thing he mentions is no DOGE cuts are codified, and also proposed fiscally irresponsible budget, hence the $5 trillion debt ceiling, backing lies regarding pertaining to Epstein. And yeah, we still haven't heard anything about the Epstein files and the client list or anything like that. Pretty sure that Attorney General Pam Bondi was supposed to be releasing that information, and we still have yet to hear anything. And also, he wraps up with saying no charges on COVID crimes, especially with Anthony Fauci. Still nothing. Yeah, he was given a pardon by Joe Biden, but it's been pointed out that Joe Biden signed all these pardons using AutoPen, and it wasn't his actual signature. So, I mean, maybe that could be used as an argument to undo those pardons, but I don't know if they're still working on it. I hope they are, because he definitely needs to get charged. But anyway, this came from Speaker Mike Johnson. Our one big beautiful bill, which is the bill that's been referenced, it secures historic savings, more than 1.5 trillion. This is a huge step forward for fiscal responsibility. I'll go ahead and actually, I'll see if I can play it. The volume has been all jacked up for some reason on my browser, but let's see. It might be too
national
quiet.
Debt is
it's
the
good.
greatest threat to our national security, and deficits are a serious problem. What I think Rand is missing on this one is the fact that we are quite serious about this. This is the biggest spending cut, Shannon, in more than 30 years. We're going to cut over $1.5 trillion in spending.
Why is the ceiling raised?
A big leap forward. The last time we had a spending cut was 3 decades ago, and it was only $800 billion, even adjusted for inflation. This is the biggest spending cut, I think, in the history of government on planet Earth. Now, is it enough? Of course not. But we have a very delicate balance, and we have to start the process. I liken this to an aircraft carrier. You don't turn an aircraft carrier on a dime. It takes a mile of open ocean, and so it took us decades to get into this situation. This is a big step to begin to turn that aircraft carrier.
Well, I don't know. I mean, yeah, let's say that's true, that they are cutting 1.5 trillion. But what are they passing that's going to increase in other areas? I mean, the way they convolute things, it would not surprise me if, yeah, there's certain areas of the government where they've cut by 1.5 trillion. But I mean, again, that begs the question, why raise the debt ceiling so much then if they're cutting? Why raise when they're cutting? It doesn't make any sense to me. And I'm not too well versed in, the federal government or anything like that. I try to be as well read as I can be, which isn't all that well read, to be honest with you. But I don't know. I mean, I guess you can just take that for what it is. But and this is also from Dustin Mills. Mark Zuckerberg is allegedly asking for the opportunity to take Elon's post as director of the DOGE department. Patriots, do you trust him? Yes or no? I don't know if that's true or not. I mean, I know a lot of people like to throw out flamboyant shit on X all the time, so I don't even know if that's really true. I mean, I don't know if I'm really opinionated one way or another. I don't think it's true. I'll believe it when I see it. But I don't believe that's going to happen, because I believe DOGE is supposed to be shutting down on July the 4th, I think. It could just be Elon exiting DOGE, but I think they're actually going to stop the DOGE operations altogether. I think it was like some temporary executive order that Trump signed when he first got in back in January. So that's pretty much it as far as X goes. I'll go ahead and play these remarks that Governor DeSantis gave earlier today. So let's give this a play. Let's see if I can get this going.
The economy, there's no free lunch, and that's what ends up happening. And it's a little frustrating,
Oh, here, hold on. My bad. There we go.
Inflation is a tax. When your money becomes less valuable, that's no different in outcome than if Congress were to simply just directly tax you. It's less transparent, it's more indirect, but is having the same exact impact. And so when they do deficit spending of $2 trillion, and they say, well, we don't want to raise taxes, and I'm not arguing for that either. I'm arguing for lowering spending, but just understand that $2 trillion deficit is a tax on you. It works its way through the economy. There's no free lunch, and that's what ends up happening. And it's a little frustrating. Elon Musk went into this DOGE effort. He was getting lampooned. I mean, like, they're firebombing his Tesla dealerships.
Yep.
Media smearing him relentlessly. His businesses suffered, all this stuff. because he basically said, look, we can't keep doing this.
Audit the government,
we need
man.
to moderate and reduce the amount of money that the federal government is spending. And yet, we have a Republican Congress, and to this day, we're in the end of May, past Memorial Day, and not 1 cent in DOGE cuts have been implemented.
Nothing,
by the Congress.
as far as I know.
That's one of the reasons why we need a balanced budget amendment to the U.S. Constitution.
I could get on board with that.
It's another reason why we need term limits for members of Congress.
Amen. I'm all for that.
But I think what you've seen with how
ban lobbying too, while you're at it.
That DOGE and Elon were on a collision course with the swamp, and the question is, what was done? And I don't think there's any question that DOGE fought the swamp, and so far the swamp has won.
Yep,
and that's just
so far.
Unfortunate, but I don't think you can look at this any other way. So this is hardwired into how the people in Washington are borrowing and spending your money. But it has huge implications for the viability of our economy, our country.
Yep, absolutely. And that was on Mr. Producer Media. If you want to go over there and check them out. I don't subscribe to them. I just happened to catch that. They were one of the only ones that had this video clip up on YouTube as of right now. And this was just put up about 6 hours ago. But yeah, I mean, I hope they get their asses in gear. But if they're shutting down DOGE in July, I wonder if probably not Elon, but I'm wondering if some of the guys that are working in DOGE currently, if they're going to continue piecing together maybe a plan. And I mean, perhaps, Trump's been full of surprises so far. So, I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if maybe later this year or maybe come January next year, maybe they'll roll out DOGE 2.0 and they'll start tackling things like maybe like what's the IRS up to or other parts of the federal government. I mean, I don't know. I'm just speculating on that. But anyway, I thought I'd get into some information on DOGE itself. I did cover some aspects of DOGE the other day, but I wanted to get into some other information, such as what are some of the top government wastes that DOGE has discovered so far. So in case you haven't been following the news closely recently, DOGE is called the Department of Government Efficiency. It's currently still being led by Elon Musk and also Vivek Ramaswamy. And DOGE has highlighted several instances of alleged government waste since its establishment on January 20th. Below are some of the top examples of government spending DOGE has flagged as wasteful, based on available information from web sources and posts on X with critical context to clarify the nature of these claims. Now, I'm not going to read everything. I'm just going to read some of what I've highlighted. Obviously, you could pause the video if you really want to read the nitty-gritty details here. But the first item here is FEMA spending on migrant housing. And migrant, I'm sure, is referencing illegal immigrants. So the claim here is that DOGE has identified $59 million spent by the Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA, to house migrants in luxury New York City hotels. Well, I don't know why they would call that a claim. That's absolutely been happening. And I would be pretty surprised. Well, yeah, I guess no. I mean, what was it? The Roosevelt Hotel? Is that what it is? But it's not just one hotel. It's more than one. So that wouldn't surprise me if it was even higher than that. But that's what it's reading. Anyway, the next one is National Science Foundation, or the NSF, DEI grants, which DEI stands for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. DOGE canceled $233 million in NSF grants related to diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives, labeling them as wasteful, which they are, not to mention illegal. Let's see. Department of Defense overspending. They pointed to $80 million in wasteful DoD spending, with broader claims of potential savings within the Pentagon's $850 billion budget. Absolutely crazy budget, man. USAID, DEI, and foreign aid programs. Yeah, they last I heard, they shut down like 90% of USAID. I mean, they were supposed to be gutting that thing because that thing is a waste, fraud, and abuse factory. So DOGE flagged $1.5 million spent by USAID, which that's not very much, really, to be honest, on a DEI program. Okay, this is just one example. $1.5 million spent by USAID on a DEI program in Serbia as wasteful, alongside $900,000 to a Gaza-based charity, Bayer Association for Environment and Development, labeled as questionable. Medicaid improper payments in Louisiana. DOGE highlighted $75 million annually in improper Medicaid payments in Louisiana for out-of-state recipients. And that's just Louisiana. I mean, there's 49 other states. I mean, this is just pointing out one thing. And I'm sure if I were to ask Grok, what about the other 49 states? It might actually be able to label, 49 other instances. Maybe with regard to Louisiana, maybe that's just the top amount compared to the other states that they may have looked into. So the critical analysis, the scale of claims, DOGE has claimed to have identified $105 billion to $160 billion in total government spending reductions, with waste being a significant component. However, only a small portion of this, which is $59 million for FEMA, $233 million for NSF, has been detailed publicly, and some claims have been revised or removed from DOGE's website. So in conclusion for this section, DOGE's top claims of government waste focus on FEMA's migrant housing, NSF's DEI grants, DoD overspending, USAID programs, and Medicaid improper payments. However, many of these reflect pre-existing findings or ideological priorities rather than newly uncovered waste. Detailed evidence of mismanagement is often lacking, and the distinction between waste and policy disagreement remains blurry. For a clearer picture, cross-referencing DOGE's claims with primary sources like GAO or Inspector General reports is essential. So the next thing that I wanted to ask Grok with regard to DOGE is, has DOGE uncovered any fraud in the government? Because sometimes you have to be a little crystal clear when it comes to Grok, or else it might kind of take you into a direction that you're not exactly looking for those specific answers. But anyway, here are some key instances where DOGE has alleged fraud based on web sources and ex post with critical context. The Social Security Administration, database issues. DOGE, via Elon Musk, claimed to have uncovered what might be the biggest fraud in history within the Social Security Administration, alleging millions of people over 100 years old, including potentially deceased or non-existent individuals, were receiving benefit payments. Millions of people getting payments. And we're not talking like $50. Like we're talking, what, $700 to $1,500, maybe even more than that, month after month after month, year after year after year. So another one here. Again, you can pause and you can read the details here if you'd like to. So here, the next one is Small Business Administration, or SBA loans. DOGE reported $630 million in SBA loans issued to ineligible borrowers, including $333 million to individuals over 115 years old, suggesting potential fraud. Yeah, I'd say that's potential. It's not to say that nobody on earth is 115 years old. I'm sure there's not too many out there. Anyway, Medicaid and Medicare fraud. The Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, or CMS, in collaboration with DOGE, claim to have identified at least $14 billion in fraud, waste, and abuse. DOGE has highlighted $75 million annually in improper Medicaid payments in Louisiana, which we did cover. And the next one is USAID bid rigging scheme. I'm sure that USAID is just jam-packed full of fraud or waste at the very least. DOGE pointed to a prior USAID Inspector General investigation into a bid rigging scheme involving NGO contracts, which I think that stands for non-government organizations, which is kind of ironic, which led to prosecutions and a $6.9 million settlement for inflated invoices as an example of fraud. I mean, a non-government organization getting government money, okay, yeah, whatever. Critical analysis, evidence gaps. DOGE's most prominent fraud claims, particularly the SSA and SBA cases, rely on assumptions about outdated databases rather than concrete evidence of intentional deceit. Fraud requires proof of willful misrepresentation, which DOGE has not publicly provided in these instances. So I thought it'd be fair to at least point that out. So the overall scale, DOGE claims to have slashed $105 billion to $160 billion in spending with fraud as a component, but only a fraction, such as $630 million in SBA loans, $6.9 million in USAID settlements, is tied to specific fraud allegations, and much of this predates DOGE. So in conclusion, DOGE has alleged significant fraud in the SSA, SBA, CMS, and USAID, but only The USAID bid rigging case, identified before DOGE's existence, is a confirmed instance of fraud with legal consequences. Other claims, such as the SSA's database issues or SBA loans, they lack public evidence of intentional misrepresentation and may reflect administrative errors or inefficiencies rather than fraud. The $14 billion CMS claims remains unsubstantiated without further details. I mean, look, it might take years and years for them to really dig into the Social Security Administration and one by one identify which of those applicants were fraudulent, because I'm sure the vast majority of them are fraudulent. I mean, it kind of makes you wonder if you fill out the paperwork fraudulently, but you fill it out in a certain careful, crafty kind of way, you could potentially get government benefits for years, and they may not even realize that you're not even supposed to be getting it in the first place. I mean, look, the government's it's extremely inefficient, man. So which areas of government does DOGE plan to tackle next? So DOGE, they outlined plans to continue its mission of reducing federal government spending, streamlining operations, and addressing perceived fraud, waste, and abuse until its scheduled termination on July 4th of 2026. So it's not this year. I must have misread that before I started this video. I thought I read 2025, but actually, no, they're going to keep going for another year. But I do believe that Elon I think he's on the verge of stepping out of DOGE, though. So I don't know if Vivek Ramaswamy is going to take the helm. I'm assuming he might, probably will, which kind of, that probably suggests that the whole Mark Zuckerberg thing is probably a bunch of fake news or just somebody speculating. But I don't know. Maybe there is some talks about that. While specific plans for the immediate future are not fully detailed in public sources, available information from web sources and expos provides insight into the areas DOGE is likely to target next, based on its stated priorities and ongoing activities as of May 27, 2025. That's today. Below are key areas DOGE is expected to tackle with critical context. Regulatory rescissions and deregulation. So the plan is DOGE intends to purge federal regulations deemed to exceed congressional authorization, impede innovation, or burden private entities without sufficient public benefit. I think that's a fantastic plan. This includes regulations that hinder infrastructure development, disaster response, or business operations. A specific focus is on leveraging recent Supreme Court decisions, such as West Virginia versus EPA and Loper Bright Enterprises versus Raimondo, to challenge the administrative state and nullify thousands of regulations. The next one is workforce reductions and administrative streamlining. DOGE is continuing its push for large-scale federal workforce reductions through reductions in force, or RIFs, targeting non-essential roles, diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives, and employees and programs not mandated by statute. By February 2025, DOGE has already facilitated the firing, resignation, or early retirement of 260,000 civil servants, with more planned. Damn. Wild, man. Technology, modernization, and blockchain integration. DOGE is prioritizing a software modernization initiative to overhaul federal IT systems, networks, and software to improve efficiency and interoperability. A notable focus is exploring blockchain technology to track and reduce federal spending, aiming for greater transparency and accountability. The next one is agency-specific overhauls. DOGE is targeting specific agencies for budget cuts, program eliminations, or outright dismantling, particularly those with expired authorizations or deemed non-essential. Agencies like the Department of Education, Internal Revenue Service, and USAID have already faced scrutiny, with more expected. Good. I like it. Fraud and waste investigations. DOGE will continue investigating alleged fraud and waste, building on claims like $630 million in SBA loans to ineligible borrowers and $382 million in fraudulent unemployment payments and $14 billion in CMS fraud, waste, and abuse. So the critical analysis, the scope and authority. DOGE's plans are ambitious but constrained by its advisory status, as it lacks the power to directly cut spending or eliminate agencies without congressional approval. Its reliance on executive action and Supreme Court rulings to bypass regulations has drawn lawsuits over legality and transparency. And then there's a few other points here with regard to impact and controversy. And Elon Musk's reduced role. I'll go ahead and read that real quick. Musk's announcement in April 2025 to step back to 1 to 2 days per week by May due to his 130-day limit as a special government employee casts uncertainty over DOGE's leadership. Amy Gleason, the acting USDS administrator, and Steve Davis, managing daily operations, may take on larger roles, but Musk's influence remains significant. So let's see here. In conclusion, DOGE's next steps will likely focus on deregulating business and infrastructure, reducing the federal workforce, modernizing IT with blockchain exploration, overhauling agencies like the Department of Education and IRS, and intensifying fraud investigations. However, legal challenges, limited authority, and the departure of experienced staff may hinder progress. Claims of fraud and savings often lack detailed evidence, and only $32.5 billion is itemized with verifiable data. For accurate insights, cross-check DOGE's claims with GAO or Inspector General reports. And I think the whole blockchain thing, I'm not like crazy well versed on crypto, but I believe that when you do a transaction in crypto using something like Bitcoin, it's all trackable. It's 100% trackable. So if they're using blockchain technology for conducting transactions in the federal government, no matter who they're paying the money to, no matter where it's going, it's 100% trackable. So that's obviously a good thing, because when DOGE was investigating, I think it might have been USAID, they were cutting checks and they were dishing out money to entities that we don't even know where it was going because they left parts of the check blank. And apparently there was no law in place that was requiring these certain checks to be filled out in full. And some of them were for millions and millions of dollars, and we don't know where it went. So, yeah, that'd be nice to put in something like blockchain related, or at least some system where it can absolutely ironclad be tracked every step of the way, just to make sure the money is being spent where it's supposed to be being spent. I mean, if they had that plan in place all along for like the last 50 years or so, I mean, our deficit probably wouldn't be anywhere near what it is today. But I mean, I don't know. What do I know? But anyway, when does DOGE plan on shutting down? So I already looked. Yeah. So DOGE, led by Elon Musk and Vivek, is scheduled to terminate its operations on July 4th of 2026. So that's basically all I got. There's some information in case you haven't heard any updates or any details with regard to DOGE. I can actually check out the doge.gov website just to see if there's anything going on here. So this is from May 25th. There are currently 47 distinct financial management systems across the 24 CFO Act agencies, with instances of disparate systems occurring even intra-agency. Homeland Security has 6 separate systems. Treasury has 5, and etc. Sometimes to transfer data between systems, paper. I don't know why it cut off. It's a contract update. So yeah, they're given information, and all of these posts are originating from X, of course. But yeah, you can still go to these tabs where money's being saved. So far, they've saved $175 billion. When you break it down per taxpayer, that's about $1,086.96 each. So they've got payments, where payments are, I'm assuming, going to or coming from, and the spending, as well as the workforce and regulation and all of that. So, and this here is measured in billions. So agency spending. Okay, so this breaks down how much money the agency spent in 2019 compared to just last year. So Health and Human Services, they spent $1.7 billion just last year alone. Absolutely crazy. Treasury, the Social Security Administration, 1.5 billion, or trillion rather. And look at this, Department of Education, $268 billion. So just real quick, let's see. Let's see if I can get a number here. How many students are in public schools across the whole country? Okay, so there's 48.2 million students that are enrolled. And you might have an idea as to what I might be getting to here. Let's see, what was that, 48.2? So Department of Education, 268 point, oh wait, hold on, let's see, 268. million, billion, 268 billion, 400, yeah, and 80 million. And just to double check so I don't put it in the wrong number. So that checks out to $5,570 is spent per student in the public school system by the federal government. $5,570 per student. So, I mean, if you have a classroom of like 30 kids, we're talking $167,000 per classroom on average per year. And I know these are really rough numbers, but I mean, we know that teachers, they're getting paid like what, like 50, 60K, something like that. I mean, I know they're not getting paid all that much for the most part. I guess it depends on the districts and whatnot, but that's federal spending. That doesn't include the state level spending also. I mean, like in the state of Florida, I know the state lottery, they like to brag about the billions of dollars that has been put into public education just in the state of Florida, and it's in the billions of dollars. It's like 20 or 30 billion dollars. Of course, that goes like way back to like the early 1990s or something like that, like the total amount that they've put in. Because apparently whatever profits that are generated from the state lottery in this state, it's supposed to be going toward our education system. So just to see that number, that $5,500 is being spent just per student, just on the federal level. And yeah, when you get into the state level and even the local level, because your property taxes, not all of them, but a pretty decent chunk of your property taxes that you pay, it goes to your local school system. So needless to say, there's a ton of money that they're dumping into public education. And I mean, if you look at the statistics, like the United States, I don't even think we're in the top 25 anymore as far as, top performing countries as far as education is concerned. I mean, we were number one for years and years and years. And then I don't know when it really started to turn, probably in the 90s. Well, it probably honestly started turning once they implemented the Department of Education. I think President Carter did that. Was that like back in the late 70s or something? And I'm sure it's probably been gradually going downhill ever since, because I mean, like, I could probably do a whole nother video on that, but I think every state should individually be responsible for education, because I mean, like, students in Idaho, I mean, Idaho is a whole different area of the country than like Florida, for instance. I mean, two completely different regions. The economies are different. I mean, like, there's different industries up there. And yeah, it just doesn't make any sense that across the whole country that we're all learning exactly the same thing. But I mean, everybody's got their own opinion with regard to education. But anyway, I'm getting off obviously on a tangent, but this is nice. So you can go to doge.gov/spend and you can take a look at all of the agencies in the federal government and how much money that they're spending last year. And then you can compare it to 2019, which obviously was just before COVID broke out and all the lockdowns and all that shit. But anyway, let's see. I think that's basically all I got. So yeah, DOGE is going to be around for a little bit longer. Hopefully they'll keep uncovering stuff. I'm glad Ron DeSantis came out and mentioned that. I'm not sure if anything's really going to come of it. Not sure what Speaker Johnson was saying with regard to saving $1.5 trillion, but I mean, it's been pretty busy on X as far as the whole DOGE thing. Let's see, I don't know if I'm going to be able to get, yeah, I see trending. I think no DOGE was trending earlier. I'm not sure if I'm going to find it or not, but it was definitely trending earlier. I don't know if I'm seeing it. It was up near the top a little while ago, but I don't think it's going to be in the news. Probably not. Nah. Yeah, that's kind of a pain. Well, anyway, it was like 65,000 or something like that. I'm not sure if that's going to really do anything. That's just going to bring up a bunch of posts with regard to no DOGE. Yeah, but yeah, it was trending earlier today. I mean, I figured it still would have been, but apparently it's not. But anyway, that's all I got. See you later.